Thank you so much. And I've been quickly tweeting all these great ideas, and this gives me now a chance to have a conversation with you. Just a couple of things that I've heard over the last hour and a half. First of all, I really appreciated this last comment, and I want to start by saying that there's no plan to create a super school any bigger than what Saltfleet is now. So I want to be clear about that. We're not planning to go much bigger than 1,200 students, okay? So you don't have to worry about us creating this big school of 1,800 people. That's not the plan. So I wanted to say that very, very clearly. Secondly, what I'm hearing from you is that the culture in the school, the environment in the school, the way people relate to one another, the way people respect and care for one another, the way in which there's no bullying and acceptance and teachers who care about you and you who care about them, that's what I'm hearing in this last hour and a half is most important to you. And I really, really appreciate that insight. I hope I'm hearing that right. Am I hearing that correctly? Yes. I don't think that was maybe I'm not hearing it correctly. Is that the right idea? Good. And the other thing that we're going to keep pushing you to think about, okay? Maybe not today, but as you've heard, there's many other opportunities for you to get your friends to join in on this conversation, and you can get back in on this conversation is, we know that you tell us we need to be interested in what we're studying. We got to have choices that we like, that help us get to where we want to go. We got to know that there's a lot of options even when we're not sure what we want to be after school. I hear that quite a bit as I was walking around. But clearly, the most exciting thing for me as the director of this board to hear from you is you also understand that you have a part to play in making the kind of environment happen. So many of you came up to me while you were walking around and you said, I know this isn't somebody else's job to create a safe school, to create an accepting school. This is part of our job. And I was so happy to hear about that. That it's also everyone who's connected to school. It's all of our jobs to be sure we've got the right learning environment, the safe and caring learning environment that we talk about. And why are we doing that? Because we want to be sure that every single day when you come into a school and all your classmates come into a school, every single day, you got to be wanting to be there. You got to be cared for when you get there. You got to be understood for who you are, and you got to be met where you are. That's our commitment. And then when that's happening, I'm going to tell you what we really believe. We believe that you're going to learn better when you're in that kind of environment. We believe you're going to excel at whatever you want to be in that kind of environment. And if you're not stressed about all this other stuff that we frankly should not have in our schools, we think that your experience is going to be great. You're going to be an amazing student. You're going to graduate. You're going to be able to do whatever you want to do. That's our goal. That is our goal. So thank you for that. But now it's my turn to ask you, and I don't know, am I carrying the only microphone? Yes? So maybe you'll have to scream loudly if you have a question, or I'll run up and ask you with the microphone. What are you thinking? What do you want to ask about based upon your experience this morning? Who's got a question? Yes?
What effects will Bill 115 have on students?
So the question is, what effects will Bill 115 have on students? And many of you probably know by now that Bill 115 is the government's legislation that directly impacts our staffs, our teachers and our staffs, okay? And right now, it's too hard to say what impact it's going to have because it's not a local discussion. So let me be clear about what I mean by that. There are some things that come from the board level that I would probably be responsible for, that if there were challenges to that, I would have the authority to work on that with whoever it is that I needed to work with it. This is bigger than us. Okay? So for me to predict what impact it's going to have is actually something I can't do. And one of the things that I always say when I'm talking to groups is I never say things that I can't state with confidence. But what I will say with confidence, because this part is in our control, though I don't know what the impact will be, we are working very, very closely locally to be sure that all of our relationships are intact, that we're being respectful of students who are first and foremost in our view. It's you. We're looking at how our teachers and staff members need to be supported, and we're trying to do our best at the board level to manage it as best we can. So I will maybe down the road have more to say about it, but right now I can't predict anything more except that commitment. Okay? Other questions? Other questions? Yes, now can you speak really loudly? Or do you want me to run the microphone to you? How about if I run the microphone to you? I'll get my exercise.
How are you okay with 30% of Ontario's budget going to your plans when we can hardly pay for like school supplies and stuff as it is?
30% of our budget. Help me understand.
It said 30% of Ontario's
Okay.
school budget.
And it actually isn't. So that's actually not true. So let me explain what is actually happening. Sometimes people create stories that are not necessarily accurate. So the question is, the question is that we have, because a lot of everybody here probably doesn't know what we're talking about. After we finished the ARC process, the accommodation review process, and we asked the government to look at our what's called capital plan. It's the plan that suggests that for us to do what we want to do in Hamilton Wentworth, we need dollars to do it. So what got out into the public, which isn't true, is that we would need 1/3 of what the province has to offer this year. But that's not true. What's true is our board made a commitment that it would use quite a bit of its own dollars, and that we were asking the ministry for dollars to help build new schools and to renovate others that aren't new. What got out there was that we were asking for 1/3 of the budget when actually we're asking for half of that. So it's not 1/3, which would be 95 million of the 350 million that they have. It's more like 45 to 50 million. So to answer your question, the board understands that we have to contribute to any building project, and it's not just asking the government for it. Okay? Thanks for that. Other questions? Okay, back on this side.
You asked us a lot about what we think the most important part of school is. What do you think it is?
What do I think the most important part of school is? This is the most important thing. This is what keeps me up at night. I need to be absolutely confident that 18,000 secondary students and approximately 32,000 elementary students are walking into their school each and every day excited to be there. I have that ideal, excited to be there. And you're excited to be there because you're in a community that cares about you, that challenges you, that makes you want to be the best. That's the first part. The second part of what I believe for our students is, I don't want to lose anybody. I want to see everybody graduate. I want to see everybody pushing themselves to learn, to think, to create, to push the envelope, to challenge status quo, so that you can then move to a place after high school where your choices are wide open and no doors are closed. And I don't mean to sound so philosophical, but I actually believe that if we do this right with you, not for you, with you, the school environment and the learning opportunities will make you the best you can be. That's what I wish for you every single day, and that's what I hope we're doing for you. And when we're not doing it for you, I hope we can help make it different and make it better. Thanks for that question. I think there was another hand over here.
When I went to the OALC camp like 2 weeks ago, the general consensus was that more of these schools need more school spread, that the school morale is down. And ways to do it, they through pep rallies and flash mobs and through concerts and fairs and carnivals, but those things cost money, and most of the schools are really tight with their budget. How can the schools get more money from the board?
Okay, so I hear two questions. One is, for people who don't know, OELC is the leadership camp where a large number of our students were invited to participate about 2 weeks ago, I think, and they were looking at the whole notion of school climate, school culture, safety, spirit, and how to make our schools engaging, wonderful places like you're hearing me talk about. So that's what a group of students shared with us. And by the way, all of the insights that come from that camp are going to be brought into the conversations that we're having here. We're not forgetting about those things. The two questions are, how do we create more school spirit? And the second one is, how can we get more money? And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think the two have to be connected. And I'm going to tell you why I feel that way. Creating a sense of spirit, creating a sense of community, creating opportunities for kids to come together and to learn and to have fun and to laugh and to be involved, like a pep rally as an example, that doesn't cost anything. So you're right. If you read the newspapers, if you listen to the news, if you follow Twitter, if you use Facebook, we're in some pretty challenging financial times right now. I don't have any control over that. And our board is a part of a bigger province, and we're all struggling the same way. So I would be telling you a story if I could say, yeah, we're going to have more money for you, because I don't think that's the case. Now, again, I started today by saying, as hard as the last year has been in dealing with some of the issues around schools and what the future holds, and some schools staying and some schools not, I know that that's been a very, very hard conversation, but it's also part of the challenge when there's only so many dollars. So there won't be more money, I'll be honest. We are looking at ways to raise money at the board level to help schools that have more challenges financially. We're looking at that. But I really want to invite you to think about ways to make that spirit happen that don't cost a lot of money. Because to be honest with you, creating effective relationships in your school that make the kind of difference you're talking about, that doesn't cost any money. So that's where you're going to have to get very, very creative. And my last comment on that front is, one of the reasons I'm really excited that you're here is that you're providing a service. Most of you in here, because of the age that you are, because I was asking what grade are you in and so forth, most of you here aren't going to be impacted by the major changes that are to come, but the students who are younger in our system, who may still be too young to tell us what high school should look like and feel like, are going to benefit because you're here. So thank you for that. Others? I'll make it there next.
You and the other trustees saw student voice at the South Arc with Concept F, and it made a difference. Do you think that if the students came together as one voice, we could have an impact on Bill 115?
I always believe in voice, and it's unfortunate that the two student trustees had to leave because they had to get back to school, but Mr. Sincerbox, who works with them, is here. I'm not sure if everybody realizes that our two student trustees are connected to a provincial student organization who, and their job as student trustees is to take your student voice to the provincial level in one method, just one. They actually meet regularly at the provincial level. There are other ways that you can use your voice as well. So I always believe voice makes a difference. I always believe that even when I stand up here and say to you, you know, I don't agree, but I respect what you have to say. Or I really agree and we didn't think about that. Or that's a great insight and we have to ponder that more. Like anytime we engage in these kinds of discussions, I believe it makes a difference. The only thing I would suggest, though, is that when thinking about how to communicate your voice, and I want to be really clear about this, sometimes I have experienced over the years where people's choice could be amazingly helpful about how they communicate their voice, amazingly harmful, and probably everything in between. So all that I would ask you to consider when you're talking about how you're going to make a difference with the passion that you bring, with the insights that you have, think about the best way to make a difference, because sometimes people think they're making a difference and they're actually causing the opposite to happen. So that would be my only encouragement, but absolutely, you and everyone in here and everyone in our board makes a difference, okay? I promised someone up there first, and then I'll make my way back.
So we all just put out our thoughts and like our concerns and our wants, and I'm just curious to know like the plan of action. What is this going to do?
Perfect question. So there's a couple of things that are going to happen. I promised the trustees, and maybe you don't even know this, the board of trustees make the decisions in our board, and I and my team work directly with them. And I said to them on Monday night that I was going to engage in 3 student forums, and we were opening up all the social media that we could to gain more insight, that the student trustees were going to go out to each of the schools and try to invite even more participation, that our hope was that you would feel that this was important enough to convince your friends who aren't here to get involved. And our goal is that we're going to bring all of those insights together, pull some really significant themes together, and then I made a commitment that when we do the work in the spring around what the next number of years in HWDSB look like, your voice is front and center in that. So what we're hoping to do is compile everything. There's all kinds of wonderful people over here who help me do that. It's called our eBest team. Could you put your hands up, my eBest team who are here? They're great people. We'll give you a round of applause. And working very closely with the team who is working with me to make this happen. Could you put up your hands, team who work closely to make this happen? You're over here, I see. There's a few more. Where's Margot? Where'd she go? There, over there. Let's give them a round of applause. These 2 teams that I just mentioned are going to help me pull together the concepts that we then can bring to the trustees in February, and then we can bring back to the community in March and April so that we can make some decisions about next steps by May. So my hope is that by next May, you'll be able to see how your voice has influenced the direction that we're going in. Okay? I think someone right here. I won't run as far.
If Bill 115 does take place and the extracurriculars, like say, do get cut, how do you think that'll affect student attendance?
Again, I never shy away from the hard question, but I also don't like to play crystal ball. So this would be my worry. My worry is whenever there's tension, whenever there's struggle, it's hard on everybody. It's going to have an impact of some sort, but I don't know. I don't know how to answer that because I think that we could make a lot of assumptions regarding what could happen, and they may all be right. But to be honest, I don't feel comfortable speaking for lots of people because I've learned something a long time ago that I'll share with you. Too often, people who are in charge of things, which in this case is me, speak for other people. It's a hazard of the job because we're oftentimes asked to comment. And I've learned to be very careful about commenting on other people's experience. Like, I don't know what you're going to do. So if I stand up here and assume that I know what you're going to do and speak with some kind of confidence that I know what you're going to do, that's not fair. And so my message was the one I gave before. If we move into more challenging difficulties around that particular bill, we'll do everything we can to work with everyone that's a part of our community. That's the commitment. That I can say with absolute confidence because I know I can do something about that. what it's going to do to people, how they're going to react, what kind of stresses we might have to work through. I can't predict. Because who knows? Like, I'm always an idealist. I mean, maybe we can move towards something positive after all of this stuff as well. I don't know. Yeah. And I would understand that on your minds, you're just interested for good reason, and I support you 100%, that you're able to have some of the things that are most important to you in your high school career. We get that. We get that. So for right today, when we don't know much more, there's probably not much more I can say except all the things that you love to do and all the things you love to be a part of, we get it. And we're just going to have to figure it out. Okay? Anyone else who I haven't heard from? I don't know if I can get the mic into the... I'm coming right over there next, but middle of the room, and then I'll go over there. Can you scream really loudly?
Okay, I go to Bart, and I've been in the manufacturing program for 3 years. And you've, like lately in the last month, you've put so much safety equipment in the matrix that it's actually made it more difficult to learn.
Yes.
More unsafe. Why do you do that?
Well, I'll explain why I did it. For those of you who don't know, we have machines in all of our schools. And those machines are inspected. And the Ministry of Labor came to see me and said, if you do not do these things, we're shutting down your shops. It's that simple. So sometimes so when you say, I take responsibility that it probably seems like I make all the decisions in the board. Just because you hear the word director and you say, well, it must all come from him. I don't always make decisions. Sometimes the law makes decisions. We thought we were perfectly in fine shape. And by the way, we were in good shape. It wasn't like everything was terrible, but the regulations have become stricter since you probably saw in the newspaper last year in one of the high schools, there was someone who was killed. That happened in Ottawa last year. So our machines were safe, but the Ministry of Labor, who governs that aspect of our work in shops in our schools, has gone to every school in the province, not just Hamilton, and made very clear requirements known. They're not options, they're requirements. And if we don't comply with Ministry of Labor requirements, we must shut the machines down. So to answer your question, if it's caused any of you who are involved in our wonderful programs a little bit of stress because there's some change going on, I hear you. I'm glad for the question so I could clarify that when it's a requirement that comes from legislation, which is outside of our control, that's why we did it. Okay? I promised I'm coming over here. Could you just...
Yeah, I'm right. Just wondering about like the 5th year, the fact that you have to pay now for it. I just don't understand why. Can you like explain the benefits to the fact that kids at 17 years old, or 18 when they're graduating, such a young age, you shouldn't know what you want to do for the rest of your life. If you need that extra year, I'm in my 5th year now. I'm staying back because I have no clue. I still don't know. I have like 3 months before I have to go to school, like apply at school. It's 2 months, and I don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. But I just don't understand why rob those kids of their education, that extra year, their time, their maturing.
Great question. A couple of things that, again, there's a lot of myths out there. I'm so glad I have this opportunity. Myth number 1. No student is ever going to pay for staying in school longer because the Ministry of Education says that that's not allowed to happen. So myth number 1, if you stay longer than 34 credits, and the issue, by the way, is not your 5th year, it's 34 credits. You need 30 to graduate. They'll let you stay till 34. Did you notice how I said they will let you stay till 34? Because once again, we're talking about something that comes from the legislature, not from Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. So point number 1, it's 34 credits that they're suggesting students should be graduated by that time. You need 30, you can stay 4 more. And for the most part, when you look at our students, 34 is pretty much the norm. So I want to be clear that there aren't that many of our students out of 18,000 that stay for 35, 36, 37, and 38. There are some, but not many. So I want to put this into a perspective. 34, 4 more than graduation. Many of our students are served by that. What they haven't sorted out yet, and I say they because we're waiting for the regulation. It was decided in the legislature that this is something that should be explored. Many countries across the globe only have 4 years of high school. You know that. Many provinces, many countries, 4 years. We historically had 5. We changed to 4. And if you look at the averages, many of our students who want co-op and other experiences that take more time are coming in around 4.5. So what the ministry did was, they said, well, 34 credits is 4.5. And then boards would be expected to figure out ways to deal with those students who wish to stay beyond 34. So they're not saying you're going to pay beyond 34. They're going to say boards have to figure that out. At this point in time, I can't say anymore because we haven't heard the rules yet. They haven't finalized the rules yet. So right now, there are no rules to this. When and if it changes, we'll get that information out very, very quickly. But again, we're not allowed to charge you. From a board perspective, that's been very clear by the government. We have to figure out how to assist you if you wish to take courses beyond 34. So again, I'm so glad for this opportunity because I guess without it, stuff gets out there without all the right information, and people start to think things, which I understand why, because I've seen it out there, and then we can't fix it. So right now, nothing's changed because we've got no regulations. Right now, it is 34, so you're allowed to go 4 credits beyond what would be graduation. And right now, how we would support you to go beyond 34 hasn't been figured out. Okay? Great. Great, great. Okay. Can you?
How come they say Mark's going to close in 2015 and I'm only in grade 9?
Yes.
And that would be my grade 11 year. I'd be done grade 11 and then 1 year I'd have to go to a different school, which makes no sense. It'd be stupid to go to a different school to graduate for only 1 year.
Yes. That is an amazing question. Based upon everything you've shared with me today about how important your school community is to you and how the relationships in your school community are so important and how being included is so important, that's our biggest challenge right now. And I'm going to be again, remember how I said up here that when I haven't got things completely sorted out, how we're going to do something? The question around 34 credits or Bill 115 is outside of our control. The question you ask about how do we transition to the new model appropriately is in our control, and that's part of what we're going to be asking for help on regarding how to do that. So to be very honest with you, we get how important your school is to you, we get how important your community is to you, and we are still working through how to ensure we get from one point to the other in the best way possible. So the answer is, today, right now, I can't answer your question. And that's as honest as I can be, but we're working hard so that we can answer your question.
But wouldn't it be better to stop at 7th grade 9 and just let the others just finish the school?
All of those issues are front and center on our plate, and we're trying to figure that out. So on this one, all I can commit to you, because it affects a lot of you here, and I understand that. On this one, please know that at the senior table, working closely with your principals. Our senior table, Mr. Sinserbach is here. Is Mr. Figueredo still here? He's your superintendent for much of the schools here. We're working very hard to figure some of that out. We're working closely with your principals to figure that out. And part of what we're going to do is utilize this information to help us do that. But because it's so challenging, we need a little bit more time. And thank you for that suggestion. Okay? Middle of the room. Why are we closing schools? And unfortunately, it's 11 o'clock and I've just been given the sign. So I'm going to try to make this an upbeat end, because it's maybe not the most easy topic to talk about. all of the conversation that we've had today about the kind of schools we want to create couldn't happen if we weren't making some hard choices about how many schools we have. Let me be very clear. I said it before, I got to say it again, because there's this myth out there that we're creating super schools, and I don't know where that came from. With the number of students we have in Hamilton Wentworth District School Board for high school, by moving from 18 schools to 13 schools, only creates schools in the 1,200 range. They're not 1,600, they're not 1,800, they're 1,200. Right now we have schools of 1,400, and we have schools of 400. You know that if you want the kind of programs you want, as schools start to become too small, no matter what we can do, we can't give you the programs. It just can't happen. And as hard as it is to go through change, especially if that's your community, the message I'll leave with you, and I'm being as honest as I can, my high school closed when I was in grade 10 with no notice. And for grade 11, I went to a new school. This is a true story. I thought it was the most awful, painful experience of being in high school. It all worked out, thankfully. So when I stand up at this microphone and tell you honestly that I get it because I didn't even have any notice, and it happened, and I experienced it. But I also have to leave on a positive note by saying, if we don't do it, then we can't provide what our students, you, have said you need. We can't do it. So what I'm going to ask you to think about is, as hard as it is, if you're someone who's worried about transitions, just keep talking to us. And we promise to listen, and we'll do the best we can. And I'm so grateful to you, because in this 30-minute session, I was able to help with a couple of things that are obviously out there that aren't, I'm not saying that well, they're not true, because people sometimes communicate in ways that make it not true. And I'm grateful that you asked me. But more importantly, you've given us 2 hours of your time. We're so grateful. It's 11 o'clock. I'm going to pass the microphone to Margot, who's going to help us move from here to where you're going. Thank you so much. I appreciate it a lot.